Hi, I'm Susan Love.
And I'm Christy Perdomo, and we are co-hosts for a new AACPS TV show called At Your Service.
If you think that your child can only get a concussion by playing sports, think again. Coming up next on At Your Service.
Hi, I'm Susan Love.
I'm Christy Perdomo.
And at your service, today we will be discussing the topic of concussions. Welcome. And today we have two special guests.
Hi, I'm Brian Layman from the Office of Athletics.
And I'm Karen Siska, the Director of School Health.
Welcome.
The school system just implemented a new policy on concussions. Can you explain a little bit about why it's important for students to know?
Yeah, the policy was developed last spring, and the policy is just kind of formalize what was already in place. It's a comprehensive plan that looks at education, prevention, recognition of signs and symptoms, and management of anybody who has a head injury or possible concussion. And they need to know that there's something in place that we've already had, and it's been going on the last couple of years, Brian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, from an athletic standpoint of view, we have trainers in all 12 high schools. And they're basically opening the line of communications with the parents and the school nurses, which is a big part of this new program. Everybody's informed of when an injury takes place, so it's not just sit them on the sideline and wait for them to feel better. So it's been going great.
So for the policy and regulation, why is that important for the school system to have a policy and regulation relating to concussions?
I think it's just a general awareness so that they know here's the procedures and here's what we're doing. You know, we have been doing it the last couple of years, and my staff most certainly has been handling head injuries during the day. But as we all know, concussions can happen anytime, whether it's in sports related, and actually most of concussions occur, according to the CDC, from just falls, regular falls. So it just, for them to know that we have something in place regardless if it happens in school, after school, at sports, wherever, there is a plan in place on how to manage them and help them.
And the big thing with the trainers are, you know, before they go home at night, they send an email to the athletic director and the school nurse. Mm-hmm. You know, if someone does get possibly injured, you know, that night, you don't want them in a band class or a phys ed class the next morning if they do have a traumatic brain injury. So this process really opened the lines of communications for the multiple different people in the school system.
So let's talk about what a concussion is. And I know, Karen, that you mentioned that concussions just do not happen on the sports field, that they can happen in everyday activities, not just for students, but also for parents and educators and the general community. So what is a concussion?
What actually is happening is that it's any time there is either a direct blow to the head or the body is hit with such a force that the head jars back and forth. And the brain inside the skull, it's almost like a gelatin kind of consistency. What happens is it hits the skull and bounces back and forth. So it hits that hard surface. When it does that, it either hits it or sometimes it actually twists inside the head. And it causes damage to some brain cells. And then there's a chemical reaction. And just like any type of injury, whether it's a sprained ankle or any type of injury, it takes time for it to heal. So there's just that force. Now, as I said, falls are generally the number one, according to the CDC, the number one reason for a concussion or a head injury. So that's actually what's happening. And if you think of the symptoms of a concussion, you know, it'll make sense. They're thinking not as clearly. There's kind of like four basic categories. There's thinking, physical symptoms they have, emotional, sleep disturbance. So there's all different kinds of things because the brain is trying to heal. It has an injury, just like any type of parts of your body that get injured. It takes time to heal and to recover.
So it could be just something that you hit your head. It's not even in a fall.
Yeah, you don't even have to hit your head. You can actually just your body be hit, but it's at such a force that the head, the brain inside the skull actually, you know, goes back and forth with such a force that it causes some damage.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to add.
And some of the, you know, the old wise tales, you know, you had to be knocked out, and, you know, sometimes you go home and you feel groggy. And so that's why getting the parents on, you know, the obvious ones, our trainers are there on the field if someone hits the ground or things like that. But like you said, shake and things like that, sometimes the student goes home and doesn't feel right. So that's why educating the parents and the community that if something's not right, they should contact the school nurse or they should contact the trainer. So it's not just keep quiet if you have a headache. And, you know, so I guess that's the big thing we're trying to get out is just to speak, you know, if you feel you're not normal, if you're groggy, and the signs and symptoms are so different than they were 10 years ago. You know, if you get knocked out, that's the only reason why you had a concussion. So, but you know, there's a lot of people in this plan now, which hopefully nobody gets through the cracks.
Can you elaborate a little bit more about the importance of the healing process?
Well, the brain, just like any part of your body, once it's injured, it takes time for the cells to heal and to recover. And the brain especially, you know, and it affects your thinking, as we were talking about the signs and symptoms. You know, then processing information, concentrating on different things and ideas. Just them understanding from their headaches and nausea, vomiting, the blurred vision, it affects your balance. There's so many symptoms. So to allow the body to properly heal is so important, because what can happen, it slows down the recovery, and it is a chance that it won't fully recover. There's also an increased chance of another concussion once they've had a first concussion. And you could probably go into a little bit about the second impact concussion syndrome that happens.
Exactly, and that's why the concussion legislation and a few things started several years ago. Is if a student gets put back into the game too early, and you can help me with if there's swelling or there's still bleeding in the brain, you know, and there is a concussion, that's when they find there's irreversible damage. You know, I think a lot of people have had concussions, whether, you know, it's skateboarding or sports or car accidents, and as long as you let it properly heal, it's okay to move forward. Where you find horrible damage is when you put them back on the field or you receive a second concussion before that first one is properly healed.
Because it affects the blood flow into the brain. So what happens is when there's a second concussion, when that first one has not had time to heal, there's an increase of blood that goes into the brain and causes massive swelling. So it can be fatal. In rare cases, it can be fatal. And it can cause permanent damage to the brain. So really the brain, and that's why this return to play is, and return to learning is so careful in the recovery process. And the management of it in school and during the play is so important. You know, we need a physician to guide us. And two, when is it okay for a child to come back to school? When is it not? For how long? What accommodations, if any, that they need? Because light and sound is an issue. Or with you all, with sports, with return to play.
So talking about the symptoms and talking about the school system what it has in place. So how can we ensure the safety if we have students that have had concussions, whether it's through sports or something happened outside? How do we safeguard, especially if it's an athlete and we definitely know it's like something that happened out on the field? How does the school system ensure that there's a protocol in place for students?
There's two different things that's going on. The parents are being informed prior to the season with our concussion awareness form. It's in the packet of information that all the students have to sign and turn in, where they're given the signs and symptoms of the concussion. There's also a new form that is the pre-participation concussion form, which any student, whether it was from a club team or a skateboarding accident or a car accident, everyone has to turn in the film. 90% of those pieces of paper have no concussion syndrome. But the ones that are checked off, the trainers go back through and contact the parents if it's necessary and make sure they're able to start. You know, if you're playing a club team in the off season and you get a concussion, the school's not going to know about it. So, and that from the same aspect is why everyone is now in the loop. So we're closing all those loopholes. So the nurse and the trainer and the athletic director and the guidance counselors are all in this conversation.
So if you could then explain a little bit more, what does it look like to return to school or for work and return to play, the field or the court? What does that look like?
For return to play is once they're cleared by the medical physician, there's usually a 6-day process, and it's just slowly getting back into it. The first day is a 10 or 15-minute jog where the trainer supervises them. So after they're finished, the signs and symptoms don't come back under exercise. I think that's one of the easiest ways for a trainer or a coach or a medical professional to see. You know, if they're sitting down, they don't have any signs and symptoms. But if they run a mile, then they get dizzy or they get faint, or so then they start back over again, or they're sent back to the doctor. And then slowly, day 2, they do a little sport-specific activity and a jog. And then it gets up to day 6 where they're doing some light scrimmaging and things like that before they get approved by the doctor to go back onto the field. On day 7, they can return to full contact.
And the athletic trainer keep a great eye on them and watch them and observe them the entire time to make sure they're not seeing any signs and symptoms. And there's great communication between the school nurses and them to see what we're seeing during the day. So if a child's struggling and having a hard time, we let them know, listen, he's still having a hard time, so that you know what you're facing when they go out in the field and practice.
And then with that dovetail is doctors are now becoming more knowledgeable, and they're sending things into school that reduce their workload, you know, no tests, or, you know, there's specific conditions that, you know, pertain to them. The thing that I've heard the most is that doctors are saying, we treat to the symptoms, you know, and it used to be, don't fall asleep.
Right.
Well, now doctors are prescribing sleep medicine, so they do get a good night's sleep, so they do get their rest. Don't take tests. And I don't know if you can speak more to that. It's a return to learn process that they're also involved with, because a lot of students have concussions that aren't involved in sports.
Right.
Oh yeah, most of them don't. And as you were saying, some of the myths, a lot of people think, well, children are resilient, they can do it, they'll bounce back. That's not true. Actually, the developing brain is more vulnerable, so they do need their rest. You're not supposed to wake them up every 2 hours because they do need their rest. Only in rare cases would you need to do that. Helmets don't prevent concussions. You know, there are just so many different things out there. It's okay, play through the, you know, pain. There just isn't that part of it. And so, you know, for us academically, we take, and the school nurse kind of works with the doctor and the parents and the counselors to say, okay, what does this child need during the school day? Can they come in for an hour, 2 hours? Can they take tests? What can they participate in? And I know for you all, it's the same kind of thing. Can they play sports? Can't they play sports? What can they do? So it's a whole team effort in managing them. So it's, you know, that whole part of recognizing what's going on and the management of them, whether it's in school or after school.
So if there's a parent out there watching this episode today and their child has suffered from a concussion, what are your recommendations if you have about another minute?
I think the first thing they do is to communicate with whoever they're involved with in school. If it's not sports, go straight to the counselor or the school nurse to see if there is some accommodations that need to be made where they are in the healing process. You know, don't just send them to school and ask them how their day was, because there are some mechanisms in place that hopefully you can make it a more successful environment.
Yeah, so it's whether playing sports or in school, we need to know, without a doubt.
And it was interesting because you did touch on something about sleep.
Yeah.
And one of the things in our world today, we are so fast-paced, is the fact that the #1 way to recover from a concussion is to rest your brain. So I think that would be a really great piece of advice to get out there to parents and students, so it allows them to have some time to let the brain heal and to have those conversations, so they might not be returning the next day to play sports or to go to school.
Yeah, they're not.
Do you have about 30 seconds to talk about that idea if a student has a concussion, and what would be the guidance to return?
It's very easy. You know, sports is just a thing that really doesn't need to be in this equation. For people that are worried about getting into the next game, it's not important. You know, it isn't, and we stress that. When they're ready and healed, they can return fully to the field and fully to school. And I think we're all on the same page now.
Yeah, your brain is a very precious thing. You need to make sure that it recovers properly and that it has time to heal, just like any injury.
Well, I think that is really the most important piece of advice for students and educators and parents in the community to understand. We're going to take a short break, but we'll be back in a few minutes.
Hi, I'm Jody Rissy, the Supervisor of Food and Nutrition Services and the host of Food for Thought. Welcome back to the excitement of a new school year. Today I come to you with exciting news about school meals. School meals offer students milk, fruits and vegetables, protein and whole grain foods, all part of a healthy school lunch. This fall, we will continue to meet and exceed federal nutrition standards for school meals, ensuring that all meals are well balanced and they provide students the nutrition they need for academic success. Every day, students are offered numerous fresh fruits and vegetables, and they're encouraged to select up to 2 cups of fresh produce every day. This is a one-of-a-kind program unique to Anne Arundel County Public Schools, and it has been in place for the past few years, providing yet another benefit to having your child eat lunch with us at school. Each year, families have the ability to apply for free or reduced price meals. New this year is an option for families to apply for free or reduced price meals online. Parents, you may log on to applyformeals.aacps.org. The process is easy and it's accessible from any computer with web access. The last piece of information for this school opening is the discussion about monitoring your child's school meals. My Payments Plus is a convenient tool Anne Arundel County Public Schools offers all parents to make managing your school meal accounts a simple process for you, your child, and the school. At no cost to you, My Payments Plus provides a secured account to monitor your child's meal purchases and account balances. It's a simple setup to receive an email notification when the account reaches a low balance, and it ensures that your child will receive a nutritious meal. For a small program fee of 4.75%, My Payments Plus offers prepayment options to your child's account using an electronic check, a credit card, or a debit card. You can also replenish your child's account automatically. If you wish to avoid the program fee, you can still simply provide us cash or a check directly to your child's school cafeteria. To learn more about My Payments Plus, simply visit mypaymentsplus.com or call 877-237-0946. Registration is free and quick, so get started today.
Welcome back to our show, At Your Service, with our guests on concussions. So let's talk a little bit about back to return to school, return to learn. Tell us a little bit more about the steps for that.
Well, when a child has a concussion, they'll come back to school. The school nurse wants to see some type of notification from a physician that they've been evaluated by someone, and then what's next? Can they be in school all day? Is it a partial day? Can they take tests? Can't they take tests? And then we work with the counselor at the school and say, okay, they can attend this class, they can't be in the hallway, it's too noisy. So just whatever accommodations the child needs to succeed in the school. And sometimes they're out for a couple days. That's not even, they can't even be in school for a couple days until allow really the brain to heal. And then slowly return based upon their symptoms. If something bothers the symptoms and their symptoms increase being at school, okay, they're not ready yet. If they try to take a test or they try to do something, they just are still struggling, then it's time. That's kind of the warning signs and symptoms that, hey, okay, our brain isn't ready yet. And then they slowly progress based upon how successful and how, the brain is recovering. But that slow, taking it easy part is so critical for the return to learn piece. And as the counselor, the kind of school nurse is that liaison between the medical community and the family, then we turn it over to the counselors who kind of handle then the accommodations within the school system and what they need, and they're working with the teachers and the staff.
School counseling office, we work very closely with a variety of members on that committee, because basically you have to form a meeting depending on the level and what the services and needs are from the doctor. It could be a coach or a trainer involved, but with the nurse. So you really have to communicate and have those ideas of what are the symptoms, what's happening with that particular child. Many times I think there's a rush to return to learn and to return to play, and that can really have some negative impacts for future learning on that particular student. And I think, and I understand it, I think parents just, let's get back to normal, let's push them along, but that rest period. So taking time during the day to have those frequent breaks. Some students might need just to be there for 1 or 2 periods and just to be able to listen. I know that lights and sound are huge for students. The other thing that's really working with the teachers to educate them and to teach them about the signs and symptoms of concussions. And so to explain to them what a student can actually handle, because most of the time they're fatigued and they cannot concentrate. And so they have to take those rest breaks. So it's really important that as educators that we work together, and I think that is really taking place within our school system, to have that dialogue, because even though we have an education and students, that's their goal, is to be successful in school, But if their brain is not functioning and we're not letting it heal, we're kind of missing the boat on that one. So I think that's really, really important for even educators to understand that you might see Susan Love in the hallway that has a severe concussion, and she's laughing with her friends. That's normal. Students still are, you know, they're human, they're dimensional. That doesn't mean they are not suffering from a concussion. So it's not something that they're, you know, especially when they're trying to get back. And so I think that we need to keep that in perspective as well. It's not that they're trying to get over on anybody, that they really need
No, they're not.
That time to heal. And I think that if you meet with teachers and you meet with the team and talk about the diagnosis and see how the child's performing, that we're able to help them return as long as they need, you know, as long as they're able to do so.
Oh yeah, you're going to find areas where they're successful and they can do and they don't have a problem whatsoever, and then you can see areas of deficit where they just can't still function. And that's where the family, the physician really needs to work with the student and the family to say, okay, they're symptom free here, they're not here, the brain obviously is in the process of healing, but it's not yet finished yet. And it is really his or her determination of when we're ready to go based upon their medical experience and the evaluation of in the process of healing of the brain, what the child is allowed to do. And as you said, Susan, it is so important for the brain to heal. I mean, you have to look at the long-term goal. Yes, you want the child to succeed and pass their test and go and be in school, but you really, the bigger picture is you want the brain to heal properly, because you know, you just don't want permanent damage done to the brain. It needs to heal, and it needs that time. And the quicker and sooner it has that time and is allowed to do that, then it'll return, and the student will be right back into school and back into sports.
Because lately we've had some serious injuries with students with the concussions, and I know that we get calls about, well, they have final exams. And I'm like, you will take them when you're well. So it might be a month from now, it might be a week from now, it might be 3 months from now. So it's really important for parents and teachers and educators to understand the school timeline stops. The 180 plus days stop, and we go into a healing phase. And so I think sometimes that's really hard because we like to follow a schedule and it's very convenient. But for students to do well, we need to put it on hold so that they can heal. And when then they come back and then they're ready to take those smaller steps, maybe take a class or two to make up some certain work. But in the long run, we know that if they don't heal, they're going to have serious long-term damage.
Right, and I think that's important for parents to know. It's okay that a child doesn't take a test right away. We're going to work with you. We're in this with you. We're a team here. We're going to work with you. We're going to work with your child, and we will see them through this, and we'll put things in place. That's part of what the policy is all about, is we're here to work with you.
And one thing, too, is I was at a conference recently, and they talk about how every child is so different. And sometimes a concussion may impact one student in math, and they just can't get those math skills. And another person could have a concussion and just be fine. So you really do need to let the brain heal so that they can process things better, and or it just isn't going to happen to their, you know,
It's
to
like
their full
any injury.
ability.
It's like any injury. It needs time to heal.
And even though they might be home and they, like you're saying, laughing, or might want to watch TV or play video games, which isn't really resting your brain, doesn't necessarily mean they're ready
anything
to
thinking
go
like
back
that.
in the classroom.
Computers, texting, your cell phones, iPads, all of that causing the brain to process information is not, you know, the brain really needs time to rest and to heal. And you know, sometimes at home they can be fine, and then they think, oh, okay, I'm good to go. They come to school, and all of a sudden the lights, the sound, the concentrating, processing information, trying to recall it, it's just too much. And then they go back and then they think, oh, you know, okay, I've got to start over again, and this is too much.
So the big thing from this is that it's individual, case-by-case basis.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the physician needs to be the guiding person, as, you know, working with the student to tell us what is okay and what the child is and where the brain is in its healing phase and process.
Thank you. Brian, could you talk a little bit about what is it different levels? I know you spoke about athletic trainers. How is that different from the coaches?
Well, in the high schools, you know, we basically have a supervised return to play. So the high school athletes are supervised by a trainer that's supervised by a physician. The coaches are involved, everyone's involved in that process. Part of this policy is educating the parents and educating the community, because middle school and elementary schools, whether it's athletic related or anything else, the parents need to see these signs and symptoms. So, you know, a high school athlete goes out the first day back, the trainer supervises a jog and a run. You know, that middle school, he's returning to, whether it's, you know, middle school soccer or football, or, you know, it's that coach and that parent that really need to watch for these signs and symptoms. And if you go to our website, there's links to many different things that you can, the CDC has a lot of great information. Our, you know, signs and symptoms of concussion is on our webpage. There's a link to the MPSSA, which is our state organization that has tremendous information about concussions and the signs and symptoms and what to look for.
So do you have athletic trainers just at all the comprehensive high schools?
Yep.
So it's not, they're not attached to a particular sport, but if there's an injury, a concussion, how does that work? Do they notify the coach and then they show up for practice, or is it?
They're considered full-time. They work between 25 and 30 hours a week at the high schools, generally practice time, so 2 to 7 depending on games and practices. They're always on site, so you know, all the coaches have their cell phone numbers if they're on the soccer field and they need to go to the football field or vice versa. The trainer is responsible for starting that chain of communication for a higher level injury. We like to say if an injury is going to keep a student out of a practice or a contest, that's when injury reports are written, and that's when the nurse, especially if it's a brain injury, is going to contact the school nurse. So 7 a.m. the next morning in a high school, they need to know what to do and not send the kids into classes that are not appropriate at that time.
So when parents have an injury or a child's being taken to the hospital, what kind of professional would be the best person to follow up as a parent? Like, would I just go see my pediatrician if my child suffers from a concussion, or what is the best practice that you could suggest?
I don't know what you think about it, Brian. I think you need to see somebody who specializes in evaluating and assessing concussions. It's a specialty, you know. It just, you need somebody who knows how to deal with it and how the recovery phase goes, so that you guide them through that process carefully. I don't know how you feel about it.
I think a lot of the family practitioners are referring, you know, people to, you know, there's clinics out there. We have multiple hospitals in the area that have some of these you know, therapy places in place. So it's come a long way in the last 5 or 10 years. You know, it used to be your family doctor just said, hey, rest for 7 to 10 days and get back at it. But there's a lot of people and a lot of different specialists, as Karen speaks to.
Neurologists are really, truly, they're the, you know, the ones who look at the brain function and who are really good at that and looking at that and kind of can direct you as what to do and how the healing process of it. You know, I always kind of look at it as if you had a heart condition, you see a cardiologist. So if you have something with the brain, you need to see somebody who specializes in the brain, you know, because it's such a precious organ.
Well, we have like a little over 2 minutes left of the show. If parents want to know more information, and is there any other information you would like to get out now, what would you suggest?
The one thing that we didn't discuss, I guess, is coaches as well as phys ed teachers are all required to take the CDC concussion awareness video. It's 10 or 15 minute video, gives the signs and symptoms. I think it's strongly recommended for a lot of teachers now. I think eventually, I think you'll see everybody in the building. It'll be a part of your every year training. But as for right now, required on file, every coach and every physical education teacher, elementary K through 12, has watched that certified video for concussion awareness.
And you have wonderful resources on the website. The school system website is fabulous, has great resources there and has everything outlined, has different links that you can go to. It's a perfect place to go for information.
Is it pretty easy to navigate?
Yes, if you just go to the athletics page and then there's a health and safety guidelines, And like I said, that has links not only to our information, but has links to the MPSSA, the CDC, the National Federation, and they all have different literature on the concussion awareness.
Okay. All right, this has been wonderful information.
Very important, very
Yeah.
timely too.
Yes.
With fall school starting up and athletics and the rec sports and the leagues. And even that, not just playing sports, but to find out kids fall down all the time off the playground, on the bikes, in the hallway.
But they're returning to school on Monday.
Right.
So what happened during the summer?
Yeah.
And that's important because
Yeah.
I think the big thing for parents is, you know, your child fell during the summer and maybe they suffered a concussion. It would have been a month ago or 2 months ago.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
starting football, soccer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
definitely important to let the school know if anything has happened over the summer, or even if you suspect anything happened at school, at home, any type of head injury at all. It's really important to let the school know so that we can best serve your child. So this is our show on concussions. I hope that you learned a lot of information, and we hope to see you next time.